welcome to the continuation of the Every Woman, Every Newborn, Everywhere, or as we call it, EWENE series on strengthening product ecosystems for maternal and newborn health. This is webinar 2, Quality Without Compromise, Ensuring Safe Products for Every Woman and Every Newborn, Everywhere. I'm Spring Gombe, your moderator. The first webinar in this series, held in September, examined equitable access to maternal and newborn health products and underscored that meaningful progress depends on country-led priorities, better coordination across all levels, and system-wide investment over fragmented efforts. In this second of 4 webinars, convened to chart a pathway to access for MNH products, we will cover why quality matters for women and newborns and how poor quality medicines harm health and trust in health systems. I will be joined by 5 key experts who will help frame our discussion, identify key gaps and progress across manufacturing, regulation, and post-marketing surveillance, drawing on real examples of solutions and lessons learned from regional and national efforts. 2 points on this webinar. For those of you who joined us in webinar 1 on access, you'll recall that we had an all-female panel. This panel is all male, and we welcome the expertise they bring while reaffirming our commitment to gender and regional diversity across the full series. You will also hear from speakers who provide primarily a perspective from Africa. We encourage you to compare and contrast this with your own experience from your region as you listen and for the discussion that we will have later. Let's begin with some housekeeping points. We are providing interpretation into English and French. So please click on the globe icon to access simultaneous French interpretation. We are recording this webinar and we'll be publishing the video afterwards. And all participants will receive a link to that publication. Slides will be shared in the chat. Please post any questions that you may have in the Q&A. And if you have technical issues, please also use the chat function to highlight those to us. If you would like to receive more information about upcoming webinars in this series, please scan the QR code that you see on the screen to sign up to the Concept Foundation mailing list. Now, to set the stakes for quality in maternal and newborn health products, I'm handing over to a co-chair of the Maternal and Newborn Health Working Group, Mr. Ben Knight, for an introduction to the series and to this webinar. Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Spring. These webinars, hosted by the EWENE Health Products Working Group, are part of a broader effort to support alignment and coordination of the community that is working on increasing access to maternal and newborn health products. Just to remind you, the EWENE Health Products Working Group is co-chaired by 4 organizations: WHO, represented by Lisa Hedman; UNICEF, represented by Francisco Blanco; Unitaid, represented by Jeff Smith; and UNFPA, represented by me, Ben Light. The working group is working with partners to develop a comprehensive picture of what a well-functioning system looks like. That work will support countries, especially during the International Maternal and Newborn Health Conference in Nairobi in March of next year, to develop strong action plans for improving national systems. That comprehensive picture, together with an understanding of what solutions are available, can help organize the actions of many partners, which especially at the national and subnational level. This, in turn, will help reduce fragmentation, which is a key factor hindering progress. So these webinars and tools are a step towards more aligned and coordinated action. Today's webinar will focus on the critical issue of the quality of maternal and newborn health medicines, a central challenge to be overcome. As a community, it is imperative that we support efforts to ensure that maternal and newborn health medicines and devices are safe and efficacious. To tell us more about the challenges we face and what can be done to address them, it's my great pleasure to give the floor to a highly valued long-term colleague, Lester Chinnery of the Concept Foundation. Lester, I remember we started talking about quality in earnest at a Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition meeting in Bonn, Germany in 2009. Since then, we've made a lot of progress, but as you're all about to hear, there's a lot more to do. Lester, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank the EWENE Health Products Working Group and its co-chairs for inviting me to make this keynote framing address. So today, I have the important task of setting the scene for our expert panelists, who will be exploring the topic of quality of maternal and newborn health products. Next slide, please. A brief but important reminder of examples of where maternal products can often fail includes oxytocin, failure to prevent and treat postpartum hemorrhage, aspirin, failing to be effective at preventing preeclampsia, and antibiotics, which fail to prevent newborn sepsis. We could add a number of other products to this list, including misoprostol and tranexamic acid for postpartum hemorrhage. Next slide, please. Like the word access, quality is a commonly heard term in our field. We talk about quality, high quality, quality assured, substandard quality. But what do we actually mean when we talk about a product being substandard or not meeting quality standards? While the process of manufacturing a quality product and maintaining quality over time is complex, in essence, it can be defined by three basic pillars: safety, efficacy, and consistency. Starting with safety, a medicine is considered safe when it contains the correct amount of the active ingredient, the API, and no harmful substances, which we often refer to as impurities. Maternal and newborn health medicines, like other medicines, can become impure if not made and managed correctly. Containing impurities results from chemical interactions which occur during manufacture. This can lead to the medicine becoming harmful or becoming underdosed and no longer working as they should. Oxytocin, misoprostol, and aspirin, and others, are highly susceptible to these kinds of quality issues. Moving on to efficacy, a medicine is considered effective when it works as intended, bringing about the desired clinical effect that it was developed for. The majority of maternal and newborn health medicines are generics, off-patent, and have been on the market for decades. Oxytocin, for example, was developed in the 1950s by Sandoz, marketed under the brand name Syntocinon, for prevention of PPH and other obstetric and gynecological indications. Sandoz conducted clinical trials involving thousands of women to ensure its efficacy as well as its safety. Generic oxytocin does not have to go through the same clinical trial process, and while leading to greater access, it also brings a greater level of risk. The only way of being sure that generic oxytocin is safe and has the same efficacy as the original product is by comparing data for both drugs. This is why it is particularly important that manufacturers generate this data and regulators insist that it's provided for review. Finally, let's mention consistency and how it impacts upon the quality of medicine. While clinical safety and efficacy data, or comparison data in the case of generics, shows us that the medicine is safe and effective, it doesn't guarantee consistent quality every time a batch of medicine is made. To guarantee this every time, it is provided To guarantee this every time it is provided to a mother or newborn, we must ensure that the medicine is consistently manufactured to the same standard every time it is produced. So we have walked through the three key determinants of quality: safety, efficacy, and consistency of production in respect to manufacturing. While manufacturing is a fundamental driver of quality, it's not only about manufacturing, particularly when we talk about generic medicines. Safety, efficacy, and consistency can only be guaranteed if all these quality principles are upheld at all stages of the journey, from factory to patient. Before moving on, let us clarify some of the terms we often use. We talk about quality assurance, we talk about pre-qualification regulatory approval, and we talk about post-marketing surveillance. These three terms all relate to the three main principles, and together are the mechanisms through which we can ensure a medicine's safety, efficacy every time. Next slide, please. So this slide is a simplified illustration of the journey of the product and the different stages where quality can fail. Keeping in mind the three pillars of safety, efficacy, and consistency during this journey, we can start to see how important it is that quality standards are there and at every stage of the journey. The raw materials used in manufacturing must be of suitable quality, with documentation to prove it. As mentioned before, manufacturing itself and how the medicine is made and routinely tested has a huge impact on whether it is reliable, safe, and effective. Regulation by national regulatory authorities or regional bodies. If medicines are not properly assessed, substandard and unverified products enter and dominate markets. And once in the market and in use, if not regularly monitored through a post-marketing surveillance system, substandard products can continue to circulate undetected. Finally, at the patient level, if clinicians, health professionals, are unaware of the quality dynamics along the supply chain, they are unable to play their part in protecting patients from harmful or ineffective medicines. In summary, behind every product is a mother or a newborn dependent upon its safety and efficacy, who trust the systems to protect them. We all share the responsibility to make that trust real. Quality assurance is not a one-time event. It requires constant monitoring, transparency, and accountability. It is our collective responsibility to make that trust real. Next slide, please. Before elaborating further on the context of today's webinar, I want to recognise that there are multiple other factors that drive quality that we are not addressing today. Market dynamics, fragmentation of the market, pricing and distribution, procurement and storage. The policy environment in individual countries, national guidelines, for example, for preeclampsia, where they are not always clear and consistent. And the environment and climate conditions, which is prevailing in many LMIC. And finally, the financing of healthcare and medicines. So to name but a few, with each of these topics deserving of their own webinars. Ensuring quality is complex. It involves many actors, not just within a country, but cross-border, regionally and internationally. Today, we do not have time to explore all of these complexities, but we'll focus on the three primary factors of manufacturing, regulating, and post-marketing surveillance. We have with us on the panel three experts, each representing these factors, who will further explore the main challenges they have encountered and their experiences, and also look at how transparency and accountability across manufacturing, regulation, and post-marketing surveillance can help us close the quality gap. I would like to finish by highlighting that slowly things are beginning to improve, but this needs to be sustained through regulatory harmonisation and stronger collaboration among quality stakeholders. We need to keep strengthening manufacturing capabilities and building the capacity of local and regional manufacturing companies. We need to build upon the excellent progress being made by national regulatory agencies, such as efforts by PAHO in the Americas to strengthen post-marketing surveillance, the recent formation of the African Medicines Agency, and better harmonisation of cross-border regulation, like they have in Asia under the ASEAN scheme, for example. And most importantly, we need to learn from success stories where risk-based post-marketing surveillance has been effective. If these three drivers can be strengthened and we work together, we can make a difference in closing the gaps and making our collective aspirations a reality. Thank you very much for listening to my address.
Thank you very much, Lester. The clear takeaway is that quality depends on safety, efficacy, and consistency at every step of the product journey. Thank you also for the examples of progress that are being made. It is always encouraging to give wings to our collective efforts. Sometimes things don't go quite as planned, even as we attempt to do so. And the video that we are going to turn to and share with you now provides a testimonial of a trial called the EMOTIVE trial. That was a clinical trial for postpartum hemorrhage products. You will hear from Dr. George Gwako about the experience in Kenya as an example of what happened across the 5 countries in the trial. I will hand over to our production team to cue that video.
Spring, unfortunately, we're facing some technical difficulties, so we're going to move on as discussed and then work on sharing the video after the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. So we have almost 200 of you in this webinar. We're very pleased and excited about your enthusiasm for this topic. Before we set up the webinar, as we invited you to register, we asked you who or what comes to mind when you think about ensuring the quality of maternal and newborn health products. And you said, and somebody's going to put up that slide. You said very strongly safety, the supply chain, regulation, equity, effectiveness, and affordability, the need for market shaping, and also mentioned many of the points that Lester has highlighted that we won't discuss here. But your focus provides an excellent entree into the panel discussion that we are about to have with 3 experts who will each bring perspectives from manufacturing, regulation, and post-marketing surveillance. We're going to have questions in 2 rounds to these experts, and I'd like to start with Skhumbuzo Gozwana, who joins us both as the director of the Federation of African Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Associations, of FAPMA, and as the CEO of Kiara Health. Skhumbuzo, could you bring your experience to bear on which manufacturing weaknesses you see most driving substandard maternal and newborn health products in Africa, and what scalable steps can and should be taken to strengthen standards and capacity?
Thank you very much, Spring, and thanks to the organizers for the invitation to this important meeting. So I think the first thing that I'd like to do is just to frame this by saying in the maternal and healthcare space, there are very few products that are obviously manufactured on the continent. So a lot of the products are coming in from outside. Yes, we've seen some developments with the likes of Juhel and others with oxytocin, coming up. So that leads into this issue. We know that strong and well-capacitated regulatory systems are a critical component of ensuring the safety, quality, efficacy of the products that we get. With respect to these products, the M&H products that we're talking about, the challenge that we have is a lot of our regulators are not well capacitated. If you just look at the inspectorate divisions, for example, you'll typically find that an inspectorate division has 30, 40, at most 100 people who are supposed to inspect thousands of plants from around the world. That lends itself to a situation where they are only able to meet or to visit these plants maybe once every 5 years. Now, we don't know the quality of these products that are coming in once the registration has happened. And as you know, of course, from previous, quality surveys by the likes of USP and whatnot, 84%, for example, in a Nigerian survey of the oxytocins were substandard, and they came from outside of the country. With respect to locally manufactured products, because there are challenges, yes, there have been significant improvements in local manufacturing and across many countries, and largely driven by investments, by interventions like the UNIDO GMP roadmap process, by the work of other partners like USP. But because a lot of companies still operate off antiquated plants, you'll find that utilities as well, your heating, your ventilation, air conditioning systems are lacking or are very dated. Laboratory infrastructure is dated. All of these things have a bearing in quality. Of course, there are cross-cutting issues such as human resources, but then the other key thing is the lack of or limited access to capital, because quality is expensive to put in place. It requires new investments in certain instances. And because of challenges with accessing capital, obviously companies are not able sometimes to move up the chain and operate at the requisite international quality systems. How do we mitigate that? The first obviously is we need to make affordable patient capital available to our companies so that they can invest in the right quality systems. We need to continue with various technical assistance programs, whether it's the GMP roadmap, whether it's the work that USP is doing. Unitaid has recently announced the MediSure project. All of these things are helping to bring us to the levels that we need to operate on. We need to strengthen the quality infrastructure. I'll use the example of Ghana, where again USP invested a lot in mini labs and all of that to assist the regulator to be able to effectively regulate the market, do post-market surveillance, making sure that you have post-importation testing of products that come into the country. There's got to be regular inspection of plants as well. And of course, as I said, other cross-cutting issues such as human resource training, amongst others. So I'll pause there and then take further questions later on. Thank you, Spring.
Thank you very much, Skhumbuza. And I'd particularly like to come back to this question of patient capital, but to draw first on another point that you have raised is the need for the assistant to the regulator and the capacitation of the regulator. Charles, you join us from AUDA NEPAD, which has played a critical role in trying to expedite regulatory pathways without compromising quality through the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization effort and the support for the establishment of the African Medicines Agency. So can you, extending on what Skhumbuza has touched upon, talk about which regulatory bottlenecks you see persist and most delay registration and access, and also touch quickly on which fixes, including reliance mechanisms, might be used to remove them without lowering standards. Charles Sandy.
Oh, thank you, Spring, and a very good afternoon or a good morning or a good evening to our participants from wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be part of the panel. I'm standing in on behalf of Africa Union Development Agency, NEPAD. So with regard to the questions that the facilitator has posed, I think we do have a lot of progress in the first instance that we have made on the continent with respect to ensuring high quality medicines are getting to our people. But we still have some capacity constraints and also some regulatory fragmentation issues which affect the quality of our services. With regards to capacity constraints, I think we do know that we don't have adequate numbers of inspectors. We don't have all the competencies that we need, and the retention of qualified, experienced personnel is a challenge. In terms of technical capacity, most of our NRIAs do need to boost their IT infrastructure, to boost their utilization of digital technologies and AI, as well as the laboratory equipment which they use to analyze medical products. of note also is the issues of financial sustainability, where more government support should be advocated for. When you look at the continent, there is quite a diverse array of approaches within the 55 countries. And this regulatory fragmentation leads to difficulties for manufacturers with regards to how they submit their applications, the submission requirements, the fee structures, the approval timelines, and all these aspects of the constraints, which are just some of them. I haven't said these are all of them, but there are some of them. But part of the solution is harmonization, and this harmonization is what led to the inception and initiation of the AMRH initiative in 2009. And the aim was to create an enabling regulatory environment. And now we are seeing that we are now starting the transition from the AMRH initiative to AMA. And with regards to AMRH initiatives, I think we could just take a brief moment to acknowledge the areas of focus which are the foundation on which AMA is coming up. And the foundational areas include regulatory harmonization, where the aim was to align national regulations with international standards. And we do have the African model law, which was part of the bedrock for harmonization. Then capacity building through various initiatives, we're bringing together the NRAs, and then lastly but not least, enhancing regional collaboration through various initiatives such as through the REGs and through the through the REGs, and also through WHO, the AVREF organization. So I will end here for now and allow us to continue deliberating. Thanks, Spring.
Thanks very much, Charles. I'm going to turn now to Edward Abuao, who is a regulator joining us from the Kenya Pharmacy and Poisons Board. And Edward, if you listen to what Charles and Skumbuzo have said, yours must feel like the hot seat, right? There's fragmentation, there's need for capacitation and harmonization, etc. Could you give us some perspective from where you sit on the main obstacles to systematically detecting substandard maternal and newborn health products, and what risks to health and markets as systems arise when surveillance is underfunded?
Thank you very much, Spring, and I thank the team for the invitation to share my experience on issues of PMS, or post-market surveillance, which is the continuous monitoring of the quality of products, and like what we are talking about now, the maternal and child health products in the market. So post-market surveillance, to start with, is a very expensive undertaking, requires a lot of resources from both the regulator and also the Ministry of Health, plus even the laboratory where these products are being tested. Now, there are so many factors that may challenge the availability for people to detect, or the possibility of people to detect substandard products in the market. Key among them is the capacity. So if the laboratory or even the regulator does not have adequate capacity to do the detection, then that becomes a big problem. You'll find that not many regulatory authority have, as been said, adequate capacity in terms of big things like human resource, the equipment, the funding to regularly do this. And you find some of them depend heavily on donors, which, as has been said, it is important that government takes over some of these responsibilities. And then we have things concerning the supply chain. Our countries have very different regions where these medicines are supplied. You find there are places that are very cold to areas that are very hot. Now, the way these products are handled, if the healthcare workers or even the people who are using these products do not take good care of them, and as we are talking about oxytocin, then it becomes a big issue. I remember, like in some of our countries, there was the issue about a room temperature oxytocin. Room temperature oxytocin varies. The room temperature varies. A room temperature in like a place next to the mountain, like Mount Kilimanjaro, for example, is not the same as the room temperature like in the northern Kenya, where it's a semi-arid area. So when it's indicated that the product is to be stored under room temperature, and this is a biologic that we are talking about, then the quality of that product cannot be really be guaranteed. And then the issue about data integration and the use of data for regulatory enforcement is also one of the challenges that we have. You find that there is not a very good system in some of our countries where people can easily report when they come across any substandard maternal or child health product to the regulator for him to take the necessary action. And this, together with what I've mentioned earlier, even if these reports come in, does the regulator have adequate resources to take immediate action to make sure that people do not get a continuous access to these products? So the other thing is, like I was being said a bit by Charles about regional integration and harmonization. We have free movement of people and goods. So if a product is picked as being a substandard, say across one country, and it can easily move to the next country, then that becomes a challenge. So developing a system where countries can even share whatever substandard products they come across with their neighbors, then it becomes very useful in protecting the patient. So when this is not done, of course, we know the health impact of having substandard or falsified products, like what we're talking about now, postpartum hemorrhage, maternal mortality, infant mortality rates. When people have access to these products, then the end result becomes that increased maternal and neonatal morbidity and even mortality. And then unfair competition for the market, where you have people who are supplying substandard products still charging them the same rates as people who've really invested in the quality of these products, ensuring that the cold chain is maintained. And therefore, you see they're distorting the market. And then things like, of course, weakened regulatory systems. People do not really have confidence in the regulatory or health systems where these products are being supplied. So you see, with all this, we need really to work together to make sure that our mothers and children have access to quality assured products.
Thank you very much, Edward. Skumbuzo, if I could come back to you, because some of what is being said here seems to be about investing at the right level and investing, if you like, for the long term, right? And you talked about what you call patient capital. Tell us what that is and how that contributes to accountability throughout the chain. Please unmute yourself.
My apologies. I mean, if you look at the current financing instruments, they are in many ways, it's your typical private equity funding mechanisms. In a setting, of course, on the continent, a lot of companies end up having to use commercial banks at exorbitant or extortionary interest rates in some instances. So what we're looking for, because this is a capital-intensive industry, number one. Number two, the time from investment to return tends to be very long. For example, if I build a new plant today, between the design, the construction, equipment, qualification, and commissioning and all of that, I could be looking at anything between 2.5 and 3 years, right? But you'll find that your typical funder will, if you're lucky, give you a 2-year payment holiday. And when you start paying, it's also at exorbitant interest rates and all of that. So what we're asking for really are instruments that take into consideration the nuances of the pharmaceutical industry. They have to understand that there is a time lag between the investments and the return. And number two, when you look at the way the markets operate now, there are very few countries on the continent which have, either carve-outs for local manufacturers or who give you guaranteed offtakes and all of that. Without that, it's very difficult for the funders to come to the party. And typically, they tend to price their interventions at a very expensive rate because they say the risk is too high. If we had a situation where, to use a term that Professor Jeffrey Banda uses often, if our governments were using local procurement as a financial asset for local companies, it would significantly de-risk investments. What do you mean by that? If investors knew that company A will get, for example, a 5-year tender, it's guaranteed that local manufacturers get, let's say, 50% of whatever the government procures, as happens, for example, in Ethiopia. It becomes a whole lot easier for a company to say, I'm going to invest in this product, I'm going to invest in the bioequivalence study, I'm going to invest in the technology I need to produce this because there's the promise of a reward for the pain that I'm taking now. So patient capital takes all of those things into considerations and says, let me not expect a return too soon. I know I will get my return, but I just have to be patient and work with this company. So that's a very, very crucial thing. And of course, it's got to be buttressed by grants, by incentives from the government and all of that, which are things that we unfortunately don't have in many countries on the continent.
That's Kumbuzo. That's a really important dimension to think about. Charles, coming back to you, my question is more about systemic strengthening in terms of strengthening the regulatory capacity. And you've talked about what needs to happen or what is happening at the continental level. When you think about partnerships to scale the impact of your efforts, what can national or international partners do better to expand and sustain the effort? And do you see threads for collaboration with manufacturers or with the regulators for safe access?
Yeah, thanks, Spring, for that good question. First, in terms of collaboration, I think we already have a lot of collaboration which is happening between countries and various international bodies. At a high level, all this work of AMRH and its progression to AMA to a large extent has been through the collaboration of international partners. And what we want to expand is a collaboration which increases the capacity of NRAs. And this collaboration is basically hinged on how countries are utilizing the WHO global benchmarking tool so as to strengthen national capacities. So we want continued collaboration with partners in terms of the assessment processes, as well as the formulation and implementation of the NRA's institutional development plan. As we strengthen collaboration, I think we are looking also at what should be the role of RECs, regional economic communities. And through our NEPAD approach with the RECs, we are slowly and surely expanding how the RECs play a role in regulatory capacity. We do have already some good experiences when you look at the work that has been done in WAHO and Sasibona and SADC, as well as in EAC for work sharing and reliance mechanisms. We are also looking at expanding the regional centers of regulatory excellences. And for this, we do have about 12 of them, which are sharing different aspects of the core regulatory functions. So what we have overarching all these collaboration efforts and the coordination is the AMRH technical committees. Specifically, in terms of quality, we have seen a progression of this through the formation of the African Medicines Quality Forum in 2017, which succeeded the network of official medicines control laboratories of 2009. So the AMQF is aiming to foster the harmonization of quality control of medicines and other health products on the continent, the quality control standards and practices, and a mutual recognition of quality control tests amongst African countries, as well as hoping that this will then facilitate medicines registration, post-marketing surveillance, and access to quality assured medicines. So all this work is actually succeeded through collaboration and partnership with different types of stakeholders. And I think this is something which we need to continue as we progress on to African Medicines Agency.
Thanks very much,
I'll
Charles.
end here for now. Thank you.
Thanks. I was just, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the experience that you, Edward, have had with the East African community and IGAD. Could you perhaps elaborate on what risk-based post-marketing surveillance as undertaken in these two regions has taught us about improving regulatory capacity, and maybe expand also a little bit on what fully integrated post-marketing surveillance looks like across regulation, procurement, and the health system?
Thank you once again, Spring. Yes, so the PMS post-market surveillance in the region, we all know that, as I mentioned earlier, PMS post-market surveillance is a very expensive undertaking, and the regulatory authorities do not have adequate resources, as I mentioned earlier, especially financial resources. So it is therefore important that they apply a risk-based system for them to focus where they think they have the greatest risks in terms of monitoring the quality of products in their market. So looking at from the type of products to monitor, where are they coming from? Where are these products being used? Who are the population that are using these products? The vulnerable population, like whoever we are talking about here, the mothers and the children. Looking at things like even the online system where the products are being sold, and also the borders where these products are coming in. So putting in place a risk system where you look at the different risks that are applying to a product, and then you use this to do a protocol. You plan for the post-market surveillance and also then implement it, because you are targeting where you have the biggest risk. And this is what we are trying to do in both the IGAD and EAC region, seeing how we can use the little resources to focus on where we've got the biggest risk. There's a tool that was developed, but I've heard about USP mentioned. Yes, they have a tool there on risk-based post-market surveillance. Same to WHO, which also has a tool that countries can easily use to focus on what they need to collect. Looking at products that are being complained about. Different countries have different systems where they collect little data about maybe the safety or even the quality complaints that people have. So collecting all this information, collating it, and then focusing the post-market surveillance on these complaints that they receive can give them very good results to see how to focus and make their markets clean. So with this then means that we really need to work very strongly on PMS, the post-market surveillance, sorry for using the acronym. And post-market surveillance, ideally, it almost monitors what the whole regulatory authority does. If there's a problem in the market authorization, it will eventually be picked in the post-market surveillance. If there's a problem with GDP, it eventually is being picked by the post-market surveillance. If there's a problem with even licensing for facilities, then this eventually appears in the post-market surveillance because the products will not meet what they are required because of the handling. And therefore, strengthening this regulatory function is very important. And then, as I said, having a sustainable way of implementing the post-market surveillance not just depending on donors, but even as a government investing in that. We've talked about regional harmonization or integration, which is very key, very important for them to monitor adequately whatever is happening within their borders and also across their borders, because people move across quite easily, and therefore this is important. But that said, the regulator also needs to be transparent and of course give feedback on whatever it does, so that people can continue reporting and seeing that whatever they're reporting is leading to something where a product is either being recalled or being removed from the supply chain, or people are held accountable for whatever they're supplying in the market, and also building on the local manufacturers to make sure that this data that comes in also feeds back to them. They see the quality of their products. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Edward. And I'll just pick up on that last point and go directly to audience questions. Because despite the fact that technology has failed us today with video, technology is going to play an important part, and the application of technology is going to play an important part in the future of how we communicate, share data, store data, etc. So there are a number of questions in the audience that relate to the utility and the application of technology, including artificial intelligence, to increase efficiencies, to improve communication, and to tackle some of the constraints that we're facing without cutting corners. How will artificial intelligence be used, or is it being used to help solve such challenges? Don't know who wants to go first, or shall I volunteer one of you?
Maybe I can start.
Yes, please.
So AI is going to be very important, and actually it started being important. I can give the example of Kenya that is currently trying to pilot the use of AI in the regulatory functions, especially in market authorization and pharmacovigilance, monitoring the safety of the products. So there are very many different processes that takes place. If you consider, like when you're evaluating a dossier, there's the initial step of even the screening itself. So if you can train the AI good enough, then it should be able to really solve that small problem there about screening, so that you get very well developed dossiers for the next steps. And then the issues about pharmacovigilance. How do we even evaluate some of these adverse events following immunization, adverse drug reactions? Some of these steps can easily be done by AI, but that does not mean that the human intervention is left out. So using those to also just lighten the work of the regulator because of inadequate resources that we mentioned about. So seeing if some of these interventions can really help strengthen even the way the regulatory authority does things. Plus also just trying to see even complaints that people even post on social media about when they come across a suspected substandard product. Is there a way that the AI can also just get for you some of this information for you to then start acting on it? It could be a signal to a bigger problem, then that can then be used. We have things like report writing, all these following post-market surveillance that can also easily benefit from the use of AI. Thank you.
So workload shifting a little bit, a task shifting to AI, but not complete abdication of responsibility. Skumbuzo or Charles, did you want to come in on this point, or shall I proceed with some of the other questions?
Just a quick note to say that AI has a lot of potential to facilitate our development on the continent. And as a continental body, our focus has been to develop an appropriate framework for use of AI in health. And this is currently work which is in progress, and a lot of discussions are happening. We are going to be having the SCOMRA meeting in the next 2 weeks, and we do have a special session on AI during the SCOMRA. And I would encourage all those who are attending SCOMRA to actually participate in that session. Thank you.
Thanks. If we could ask those helping us in the background to maybe share that link in the chat, that would be great. This question goes to infrastructure that supports all of what is needed for manufacturing regulation and post-marketing surveillance. It reads, with unreliable electricity still a major challenge in many countries, gives an example of Nigeria, what innovative solutions are being developed to preserve the efficacy of temperature-sensitive products, such as oxytocin in low resource settings? So maybe Skumbuza, I could ask you to reflect on it as a manufacturer, and then Charles, you could come in, and Edward with the regional and national perspectives.
Yeah, look, I think from a manufacturing perspective, even where you have reliable utilities, it's always prudent for business continuity to have, you know, backup after backup. So in a setting, for example, in the South African context, we also went through a phase where there were challenges with electricity supply. And like most companies, you'll have your generators, you have your solar, you know, just to ensure that your operations are not impacted. Because obviously, some of these products are so sensitive that if you have a prolonged power cuts, you literally have to dispose of entire batches, which is a very costly you know, undertaking. So I think that would be the first thing. But I think just looking at how you move the products, the supply chains have improved significantly on the continent. There are companies with significant competencies, Imperial, DSV, DHL, all of these players are on the continent. And so having the right partners with the right capabilities is also crucial. But of course, there are newer technologies. I think we don't have to be stuck in the old ways of doing things. We can leapfrog and look at newer technologies, smaller, more adaptable to the conditions and all of that. So I think there are multiple options that can be utilized to ensure that we deal with these issues. And of course, lastly, continued pressure on governments and ministries of industry, of, you know, the energy, to ensure that critical industries such as pharma are given the necessary priority in the supply of electricity, for example, as relates to this question.
Thank you. Edward, Charles, would one of you or both of you want to come in on this? Edward, please.
Not really, but
Okay.
What has been said about considering solar and maybe use of other temperature, not very temperature sensitive products can also be another intervention to use.
So investment in innovation, which is a different discussion for another day, but investments in innovations that are not as heat sensitive. Okay. Charles, anything to add, or can I pose a question on pharmacovigilance?
But I think the only addition I can make is that infrastructural development on the continent is quite a big need. And what we are doing at Outer NEPAD is rolling out this program for infrastructural development in Africa, the PIDA program. And this program is aiming to help our capacities. So this is still ongoing. We are still very far to reach where we want, but it's looking at everywhere from roads, electricity, and the like.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like even though you sit here in this one ecosystem, you're paying attention to what is happening beyond health and beyond manufacturing in order to ensure that the products reach those who actually need them. I think we have time for one more question, so I'll pose that, and I think I'll pose it to you first, Charles. How do we ensure pharmacovigilance is institutionalized in countries to ensure end-to-end visibility of quality of essential maternal health medicines or products after they are placed in the pipeline?
Thank you very much for that nice question. What we have done at a continental level is to look at how we can strengthen the capacity within countries. And this is through the Technical Committee for Pharmacovigilance and Safety Surveillance, which has been established. And this committee is responsible for coming up with continental guidelines and procedures to help countries to establish good quality controls and market surveillance on the whole continent. We also have the AU3S project, which is also one of our flagship projects at Auda NEPAD, which is looking at smart safety surveillance and supporting countries' capacities in surveillance. I think we have started off with a few target countries. I can't remember how many of it, but this is something that we hope will be able to continuously scale up over.
Thanks. That was very, very clear. Our panelists, we're coming to the end of our webinar. Thank you very, very much for your participation. Maybe just a rapid fire round. What and where do you want to put immediate pressure to ensure quality for maternal and newborn health products? Very, very fast. I'll start with you, Edward.
So we need to strengthen the regulatory authority. They say even for local manufacturing, the local manufacturing in a country is as strong as the regulator. If you don't have a very strong regulator, then even the local manufacturing will have a problem.
Point taken.
So focusing there and working on them will be good. Thank you.
Thanks. Skumbuzo.
Strengthen local manufacturing. It's a whole lot easier for our regulators to inspect plants that are in country, down the road, or across the border. Strengthen local manufacturing. Promote partnerships between regulators and manufacturers. This adversarial relationship doesn't help anybody. We need to work together to protect public health. And I think we need to strengthen local manufacturing to be able to protect ourselves from the likes of the Made in Pharma saga.
Thank you. And you're taking that upon yourself, accountability upon yourself as a manufacturer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Charles.
I think my two colleagues have said it all, but to add on to what they've said, we have developed the 24 priority medicines for local manufacturing in Africa. And I think what we now need to do is to mobilize resources to support local manufacturing through various innovative financing mechanisms, including domestic resource mobilization.
Thanks very much. You take us back to the beginning of this webinar, where Lester underlined that we have a collective responsibility to ensure quality of products for maternal and newborn health, for other products as well, but since our focus is on maternal and newborn health. And that requires collaboration between the regulators and the manufacturers, and investment in resources from everybody who is in a position to do so. And then use of and 360-degree feedback into the guidelines that are provided by either the regulator or by their technical assistance through such agencies as Auda NEPAD, through model laws and provisions that are created for guidance. Quality depends on safety, efficacy, and trust, and the closing of all of the gaps that exist for stronger manufacturing standards, regulatory reliance, harmonization, and surveillance. Continuous improvement is our joint responsibility and our common ambition. This second webinar and those that follow will continue to contribute to the closing of the fragmentation among us, to the benefit of all mothers and newborn children. Huge thanks to Ben, to Lester, to our panelists, Skumbuzo, Charles, and Edward, to our hosts at EWENE with Unitaid and Concept Foundation, to you, our audience, all 200 of you. Our next webinar will focus on procurement, and we will assess how to streamline and align policies and accountable procurement processes. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.